Good evening and welcome, City Council and LTD. And LTD Board, welcome to this joint meeting July 15th. It's great to see you all, and I look forward to the conversation.
I will also gavel us in. Welcome, Lane Transit District Board, and thank you, Eugene City Council, for having us today.
So we'll just begin with a quick round around the table of introductions. We will, let's see, who are we missing? We are still missing Claire, Alan. Claire will appear. Alan is on his way on his commute. So why don't we start around this side of the table? What do you say? And just kind of for councilors, just name and ward, I think.
Great. I'll go ahead and start off. My name is Carl Ye. I'm the president for the LTD Board, and I represent Sub-District 2.
Emily Semple, Ward 1.
Jennifer Ye, Ward 4.
Caitlin Vargas, Sub-District 6.
Mike Clark, loosely associated with the City of Eugene, representing Ward 5.
Kate Reed, Vice President of the LTD Board, representing Sub-District 7.
Chris Pryor, Council Ward 8.
Josh Wiscove, Sub-District 5, Board Secretary, LTD.
Greg Evans, Ward 6.
Emily Secord, LTD, Sub-District 3.
Betty Taylor, Ward 2.
Lucy Venice, Mayor of Eugene. Okay, thank you all. So just a couple of rules will be familiar to most of you. We've done this before. We'll have the staff presentation first, and then open it up to questions. We'll allow questioners 2 minutes, and I'll keep the cue for the city councilors, and Carl will keep the cue for LTD. And just a kind of reminder, I'll be a reminder to staff also, we're holding everyone to 2 minutes, and so concise staff responses are also helpful as we get through more. So sometimes it's the enthusiasm of the moment. Thank you so much. So I think we're ready to begin.
I'm Chris Henry, the City of Eugene Transportation Planning Engineer with the Public Works Department. With me this evening is Terry Harding with Planning and Development and Andrew Martin with Lane Transit District. We're going to provide you an update for moving ahead, a joint project between the City of Eugene and Lane Transit District to provide safe and accessible transportation options for people, whether they're walking, biking, riding the bus, or driving a car within Eugene along 5 major corridors. Terry's going to provide an introduction, and the bulk of the presentation is going to come from Andrew. He's done a great job in similar settings explaining what we heard through the public engagement process.
Thanks, Chris. So in addition to moving ahead being a collaboration between the City of Eugene and Lane Transit District, it's also a collaboration between transportation planning and land use planning. And that's why I'm here, in addition to the transportation folks. As Chris said, moving ahead is going to implement several existing long-range plans, including Envision Eugene, memorialized in this community vision document, which has our 7 pillars. You can find this at envisioneugene.org, as well as our transportation system plan, LTD's long-range transit plan, our Vision Zero action plan, among others. We also have in your packet a copy of this executive summary. This is a really handy document, also available at movingahead.org. It includes maps of all the different corridors, the different options for improvements along each corridor, and then the evaluation of all of those. So it's a very handy document. We still have a few paper copies floating around, if you would like one. But we're going to spend most of our time, Andrew is, walking you through what we've heard from the public about different ways that we could combine the options that have been analyzed into investment packages. So what combination of investments is right for this time and place, and what would you all like to direct us to do to take those options out to the public for a public hearing? That's really the ask of this meeting. So we're going to go through what we've heard about the different packages and then ask you to tell us what you would like to put on the public hearing agenda for the fall. So I'll hand it over to Andrew.
Thanks, Terry. So if you'll recall, the last time we had a meeting like this earlier this year, we were presenting the results of a first public outreach period we did at the end of last year when we released our alternatives analysis. We packaged the we put the alternatives into a series of packages and took those back out for a second public outreach period to ask our community how they felt about how the alternatives work as a system. So from March 11th to April 10th this year, we did quite a bit of outreach. We had a 30-day public comment period. Sorry about that. We had a 30-day public comment period where we got out in the community. We mailed postcards to everyone within a half mile of the corridors, did quite a bit of social media and online outreach. We went to community groups, got in community newsletters, got on the TV and the radio and the media. We took LTD's outreach bus out to the corridors to try and meet with people at different times, and really just try to generate interest in our open house and online open house that we did, where we were asking for feedback from the community. So that culminated with getting about 42 people who signed in to our open house in person. From that, we got 22 complete survey submissions. And we also had an online open house where we had more than 1,000 people who went to the website. 269 of those completed the survey. But we were really happy that we got more than 1,000 people to at least take in the information that we were presenting. At these open house events, we were asking the community to tell us their preferences on how they rated the alternatives and what we should be focusing on when we're doing our evaluation of those alternatives. So again, we asked about the criteria we should use to evaluating them, and we collected open-ended comments. We asked them to build their ideal package, understanding that maybe staff didn't get it quite right. So we gave the community the opportunity to build their own package. And using this, we've developed a few different ways to kind of look at what the community is saying. The first, we asked the same kind of question: what should we be focusing on in our evaluation criteria when we're evaluating these? We heard largely the same thing as the first public comment period, which is really reassuring. The top things that our community said that they were interested in were the potential safety and access improvements for pedestrians, bicyclists, and people using transit, travel time decreases for transit, ridership increases, investments in corridors with disadvantaged populations or environmental justice concerns, and followed by operating and capital cost. Other kind of considerations were rated quite a bit lower, and those are the same things we heard in our last outreach period. So getting into how our community rated the packages themselves, if you'll recall, we had 5 packages we took out, 2 bookend packages, which were all enhanced corridor and all MX, followed by 3 we called them mix and match packages that were lower scale, medium scale, and higher scale investment. Starting with the all enhanced corridor package, this was on average relatively low in the ratings. As you can see, it's pretty spread evenly across, but it does skew towards more concerns than people feeling it works well. One thing that we really heard in conversations with our community, at the open house, in comments, we heard that people rated this, who rated this low, many of them had concerns about it not being enough investment. So it's not that they weren't supporting investment, they said very explicitly that this wasn't enough. For people who rated this positively, we found a strong correlation when they rated the evaluation criteria, that what they were most concerned with were the operating and the capital costs. Package A was our lowest level of capital investment. We again heard from many people who rated this poorly that it lacked the level of investment they thought we should make in our community, that there wasn't enough investment. Again, people who rated this well were prioritizing operational and capital expenses. This had the lowest average support from the community. As you can see, the red on the graph is quite a bit taller than the blue. Package B, which was our kind of middle level of investment, again, it was starts to get into a higher average rating. It was kind of right in the middle. A lot of people noted that this might be kind of a good compromise in the open-ended comments. We heard less, but still some people saying they needed more investment if they were going to support it. We also started to see more people saying that they were concerned about the capital cost if we did this. It did have a higher support, though, than the previous two packages. Package C, which was the highest level of investment in the mix and match that staff developed, people started mentioning things like they appreciated the return on investment. This had the second highest average rating of all the packages. But we did start to see more people who expressed concern with capital cost. Even some people who supported the package said that they weren't sure how we were going to pay for it, but this is where they wanted the community to go, that we should find a way to do that. Finally, the All-MX package was very polarized. The graph is very telling. It actually has the highest average support if you put this on a scale of 1 to 5. But again, you can see it's quite polarized. People who rated this positively in their evaluation criteria, they told us that they really focused on the travel time improvement, potential for ridership increase, and how this could improve safety and access for people who are walking, biking, using mobility devices in the community. And as I mentioned, it was the highest overall support, even though it was polarized. Another way of looking at kind of the outreach we did, we asked the community, build us a package. Tell us, what would you do if you got to pick the package? And we heard from 249 individuals. We got, I think, 57 unique packages. So many of those were just very slight variations on things that staff had created or things that other individuals in the community were suggesting. Overall, 20% of the people who responded to this actually picked the All-MX package. They wanted the highest level of support in all the corridors. 8% built no-build packages, so they wanted nothing in any corridor. Overall, what we found, though, is that there's more support for building something, and that tends to be for more investment. And the reason that we say that is we kind of, in order to figure out kind of how to make sense of this, we took the packages, and for every time people proposed a build alternative, we gave it a number of points. So a no build would be 1 point, enhanced corridor would be 3 points, and MX would be 5. And that allows us to get a sense of scale. Maybe in those 57 packages, there are a lot of different things, but one thing we can tease out is that sense of scale. In the graph you can see on the screen now, you can see in that 5 to 7 range, you would have to build all no build to be in there. So quite a few people did suggest that it might be all no builds in one enhanced corridor, perhaps actually two. The 9 to 11 point category, that's similar to what we presented in package A. Package B would be something like the 13 to 15 in the middle there, package C in the 17 to 19. So as you can see, it does skew towards more investment, even if what those people were suggesting is actually not super clear. Many packages just had 1 or 2 people who suggested it. But our big takeaway from this question was that people do want more investment, even if it's not clear what that is. So in response, staff took some time to analyze that. We went through all of the open-ended comments, and we refined the investment packages, and that's sort of what we're bringing back to you today. We have gone to, so what we did was we reviewed all those, incorporated it, and we wanted to sort of address different aspects of the feedback. So in the technical document you got, it goes through our kind of reasoning for modifying all of our packages, but we still wanted to bring a range back to this group so that you can get all the information you need for a public hearing. We took these refined packages. We had 5 of them. We just called them, we kept the 2 bookends, and we called them Modified A, Modified B, and Modified C for simplicity. And we took those to our committees. We have a sounding board, we have an oversight committee, and we also hear from Lane Transit District's Strategic Planning Committee. Those committees considered our refined packages, and they actually made a slightly different recommendation than what we did to the council and the board today. On the next slide, I'll show what those are. Both the Oversight Committee and LTD's Strategic Planning Committee independently made recommendations to forward the following set of packages to you to consider for public hearing. So those are the 2 bookend packages with the enhanced corridor and MX, and reducing the number of packages to 4 to kind of make it more simple. They proposed taking out original package C, which, if you recall, is enhanced corridor everywhere except for River Road, where we're proposing to have MX as the alternative, and the modified package C, which is enhanced corridor on Highway 99, 30th Avenue to LCC, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and MX alternatives on River Road and Coburg Road. So staff today are here to answer any questions you have about the outreach. I know we went through it pretty quickly. There's a lot in the technical document, but we are essentially asking for feedback on the packages and what we should take to a public hearing this fall.
Specifically, we're asking you to affirm the recommendation here or provide a different range of packages for a public hearing.
Okay, excellent. So do I have counselors who are ready for questions or comments? Well, if any counselors ready to speak to this? All right, Emily, Counselor Semple.
Thank you. This looks like a ton of work, so thank you very much for that. It was pretty confusing with all of these graphs and this percent and that percent, and I read through it, and I can't say that I really got anywhere with it. The last presentation of, where you can have a crosswalk and where we're going to have bike lanes, I understand that, and I like where those were going. Of course, I want to buy the full package for everybody, but that made me fall over at the cost. So when it comes down to these choices, it seems that for whatever reason, I don't know, that we need an MX on River Road and probably nowhere else. And then if I was going to pick another one, I would say Highway 99, because we need to build things out there, and Coburg Road seems like a nightmare of a place to put in MX. It's, unless we can put in a monorail out there, I'm kind of don't know what to do. So my point is, I'm a little bit surprised that this really doesn't seem to come down to a very big choice to ask people to speak to. It's sort of, do you want to spend we don't have no build up there at all, and that should still be a choice, and that's not. It seems like, but it comes down to, you want to spend no money, a little money, a medium amount of money, or a lot of money. And I don't know that that really encompasses what these choices are about. So, and when you ask people to build it, they wanted a whole myriad of choices. So I'm just, kind of confused as how I would even pick one, because mine's not up there.
No build is always a choice. It's just not recommended because it's not consistent with our policy guidance.
Okay, thank you. Anything about why River Road was, definitely needing an MX, and then the next choice was Coburg?
So the reason River Road is presented in our initial round of public outreach, we found that River Road was the only corridor where, on average, people supported MX above enhanced corridor. On other corridors, it was very close in most of them, but on average, enhanced corridor had a bit more support, largely due to MX being kind of polarizing in many of those corridors. People felt it worked very well, or that it didn't work very well at all. Our initial recommendation did not include the Coburg Road, but in this second round of public outreach, we heard a lot of comments very specifically citing the need for Coburg Road. So we wanted to present an option. The reason the two lower kind of scale packages A and B, were removed, that was at the recommendation of the Oversight Committee and the Strategic Planning Committee, that some of the feedback we were getting was, if they're not rated highly, kind of paraphrasing here, but if they weren't rated highly and they're not as consistent with our plans and policies, why would we put that forward as an alternative? If the two bodies feel that we need to put those out for public hearing, we certainly can.
Great. I do just want to point out that the MX on Coburg is 113 million, which is a lot higher than some of the others. Thanks.
I'm taking the cue for LTD, and I have Don, and then Josh will be in the next one.
Andrew, I wanted to get a little more specific about in the polarizing thing. We see a lot of folks who don't want MX, and you said generally it was the capital costs that bothered you. And I'm wondering, well, how did you determine that? I mean, I could see if we went out for a vote and people were actually going to say, this is going to cost me something here. But I'm wondering how much the general population understands the balances of, well, what percentage we have to pay, how much we're going to get from the state, how much we're going to get from federal, and really what, you know, are they evaluating what each individual is paying for their current consumption of mobility? And so that question of, well, there are people just opposed to spending money for anything, you know, they're just anti-tax. But I'm, in your finding the background to support the opposition to capital cost, that's where I'm trying to get more specifics, like who is really opposed to that? Do they really understand what they're talking about? Well, I don't know. Could you go on with that?
Sure. I mean, to the extent that they're informed, I'm not sure that they know the fine details of how Federal Transit Administration funding works. I don't want to make any assumptions. All I know is that we ask people, you know, what do you care about? And a not insignificant number of people focus on the costs. They could be, people who are worried about local taxes. We hear from people that say that we should spend the money on something else, that if we were going to spend that money, we shouldn't spend it. It's really hard for us to find out exactly what their motivations are beyond, asking them, what do you prioritize? What do you think we should prioritize as staff and as decision makers? What should we focus on when we make these decisions? That's kind of all we can ask. In conversations, we learn individuals, and some of them, like I said, are people concerned about our payroll tax, people concerned about, our ability to fund, frankly, road projects. We hear, how do you do all of these things? So I think it's a mixed bag.
Thanks for trying.
Claire?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Apologies for being late. I was having technology problems that are not solved, so I don't have my normal written comments, so hopefully I won't ramble. Well, I think we all received an email from BEST, which was established as a community response to opposition to the MX on West 11th, the West Eugene MX, and came together to strongly advocate for the value of these kinds of investment in our community. And so I just want to take a moment to reiterate the reasons that we're having this conversation and the impetus that's upon us as decision makers to think ahead, to think to years out in terms of what our community will look like as it grows, which it will, which we know is going to happen. And if we aren't prepared to meet that growth with some alternatives to each of us driving in our own individual car, in spite of what Uber might like us to believe, we are going to have terrible congestion on our streets. And so not only does this work mean we're working to meet our climate recovery goals, we're working to prevent the need to sprawl into our farmlands and forest lands, and provide alternatives to people who aren't able to drive or don't wish to drive, and increase bike and pedestrian safety all at the same time. So I just wanted to bring that forward into the conversation to kind of give the, a rationale for why we might be considering multi-million-dollar packages for our community. And I can't see a timer. I will need a second round.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Josh Gove.
Great. Thank you. First of all, thanks for the work. I seem to have been seated here at the staff table. I feel an extra kinship. This is like the kids' table at Thanksgiving, I think. So it is a tremendous amount of work, and you guys have done a great job summarizing and putting this forward, and I really appreciate the details of the public engagement in particular. I actually recommend the summary document on the public engagement. You actually learn a lot from hearing what people say in detail. 3 points that I'll put out there, and some of this is just going to follow very much on what Councilor Syret just said. I really want to emphasize that these are not just transit investments, and I think you heard that already, and, what Terry said, I really want to double down on. These are transformations of our transportation system very broadly. And so we should make sure when we're thinking about them, we're not thinking, oh, that's a lot of money on transit. It's a lot of money, to be sure, in each of these packages, but it's a lot of money because we're transforming the entire transportation system in these corridors. So that's the first point. The second point is, I think there's a piece of analytical work, and Best has been talking about this in a variety of settings for a while, that has not been done, and that is really filtering at the level of individual parcels for redevelopment opportunities. I think you've heard several times from Rob Zako of Best that that TriMet has a 7-to-1 rule that it hopes for every dollar of investment in transit, it hopes to spark $7 of reinvestment in a corridor. Until we've really done that work, I don't think we should be choosing corridors, because corridors differ a great deal on redevelopment potential. But I think there's another piece of analysis that's not easy, but still somewhat straightforward, that could tell us a lot about where we should be putting our transportation and transit dollars. And the last thing is, I really think there's been so much work done now. We're kind of entering the period of details and trade-offs, and I think we actually need to. I want to hear ideas. I don't have all of them for sure about how to assemble a funding strategy. At some point, it's just not enough to say, like, here's the price tag. We need to be saying, this is what we think we'd get from the feds. This is what the city could put in. This is what LTD could put in. These are the new taxes we could propose. But we need to be honest about that at this scale.
Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that in the second phase here of listening, that you got a sort of different level of input about the Coburg Road corridor. Who did you get that from? If you got a different kind or a different level of income, of input, how would you define the people you got it from? Who was it?
I don't have the demographics in front of me. In the appendix to the technical report, there's an outreach summary which has all the demographic information. We can follow up and provide that. We don't ask, we don't try to isolate responses to necessarily people who live on the corridors, because we are talking about a system-wide investment. To be clear, we didn't get I wouldn't say a substantially different response when asking about Coburg Road. In the first round of outreach, we asked about each individual corridor and each alternative in those corridors. The MX was not rated as highly as the enhanced corridor, but no build was actually the lowest rated in that round of outreach. This time we didn't ask about Coburg. We asked about Coburg Road in the context of packages. It really came out of the open-ended comments that we received, that people said specifically. And to be clear, we're not talking about a large, I'm not saying like 80% of people said invest on Coburg Road, but it came up time and time again, and also in the build-a-package results where people were proposing to put MX on Coburg Road, or said, this would be transformative for our community. I don't know if that answers the question exactly.
Not really, because I was actually looking, but it helps me understand your process, but not what I was looking for, which is really more how many people who live anywhere near Coburg Road were a part of the discussion, or is that a bunch of people that don't live there or in that part of our community that were driving that policy kind of input? And I think that's a pretty distinct difference. I think it's not an insignificant difference. I agree entirely with what Emily said, almost absolutely entirely. I believe that these are good projects at a significant build-out rate for both River Road and especially for 99, taking into account especially Josh's comments about the capacity for development along the way. I think Highway 99 is, for me anyway, a significant target area for that. But I think that enhanced service along Coburg Road is going to make things nightmarishly bad. I only have 27 seconds here. I saw a video of what I think was in Europe, of a vehicle that was different, a bus that could extend up above traffic. You know what I'm talking about? Saw that? I thought Now, that works on Coburg Road. Other than that, no, we are going to have people waiting for an hour, you know? So those are my comments. Thanks.
I didn't see anyone else on the queue, but I wanted to put myself in there. So as someone who lives in the Coburg corridor and represents that sub-district, I can say that I can answer Councilor Clark's question directly. I'm one of the people who would be an advocate for something significant to happen on Coburg Road, because they need no further proof than to just spend any amount of time on that corridor to know that it cannot remain the way it is. I think the most important thing I want to say is that I feel like what we're here to do is to get public input on vision and direction for where these transportation and infrastructure programs should go. If we just focus on the cost, we probably won't build anything, because some of the price tags are scary. And if we focus on whether it's going to cause lots of hassle or that's going to be very difficult, because Coburg Road is a very challenging corridor, then I think, again, we're not going to move forward like I think we need to. So my answer to this is that we're not here as a group to worry about those logistics. That's something that we just provided the vision and direction for it. And there are people, experts in transportation, that will try to meet those goals for us. And so will it be necessarily MX? Maybe. And if the cost and everything else pans out, because, you know, at some point I can imagine with extra growth and the need for more that corridor getting even more people and traffic, yeah, maybe $113 million isn't so bad when you're trying to move people through that area. So, and I will take I didn't see other hands, but if any other LTD board member would like to speak after the next city councilor, please raise your hand.
Okay, thank you. Greg.
Thanks, Mayor. I think what we're really looking at right here is basically three alternatives, and that is the no-build alternative, which from my perspective, and having been an LTD board member, having worked for LTD before, is not really the way to go. I think that given the growth of our community, as far as population is concerned, the needs for people to move through corridors quickly and efficiently are going to take precedence in terms of what our decision-making is going to be around this. And I see that we're going to have some level of enhanced service throughout all five corridors that we're discussing. What that looks like, I'm not exactly sure. It could be a partial enhanced corridor. It could be a fully enhanced corridor. It all is going to depend on a number of factors, and one of which is cost and where the money is going to come from. So how we do it, how much we do, is going to be predicated upon a number of different factors. From my perspective, I think that the two places that we want to go with a full deal, which is MX, which is Bus Rapid Transit, is looking at River Road and Highway 99. River Road, from the perspective that when I worked for LTD 30 years ago, the 51 was problematic in terms of its timing coming into the downtown station. Very often, you would miss transfers because that line was backed up. You had the railroad tracks that it was crossing, a number of other obstacles that it had to deal with, and that kind of really throws the system out of whack. And in order to alleviate that problem, solve that problem, I really think that having MX on River Road would meet the demand and needs and the growth that has happened on River Road in terms of residential development and other issues related to that. Highway 99 needs MX because it is going to be the next major growth area in this community. And the only way that we're really going to enhance that is through transit-oriented development. And the way that this is going to happen is by having MX placed on that corridor, you're going to see transit-oriented development grow and expand and enhance the livability of all the residents that are out in that area. Claire and I and Chris share pieces of Highway 99, and I'm not speaking for them at all, but I do think that if I could read their minds, that they would concur with my analysis on this. So that's the way that I would think we should go with this, and to look at our investments in a strategic way that will enhance the entire community.
Is there an LTD board member who would like to speak? Okay, seeing no, oh, go ahead, you can do a second round, go ahead.
Are we doing a second
Yeah.
round? Yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Josh.
I was trying to wait for others to jump in. I guess just a couple of comments, and maybe it'd be helpful for me to hear more from Councilors Semple and Clark on this. I'm confused at the notion that it would be a nightmare on Coburg Road. It's the absence of transit that is so dangerous to Coburg Road over the long haul. So I'm just saying that, you can't build more roads. Building more roads causes more traffic anyway. We've sort of proven that elsewhere. And so I'm curious just to hear the reasoning there. But I guess from a redevelopment potential standpoint, it's not obvious to me that Coburg Road isn't also near the top of the list. But again, that's why I'm saying I think we're flying blind. Without that sort of an analysis, this is a little bit of guesswork. The second thing I want to say, that, and this is not to complain about the analysis. I think the work that's been done is excellent, but there is something that's missing that what makes it hard for us to have a conversation about funding, and that is that these numbers are pretty much out of context. There's nowhere here where we see what we spend on transportation right now. There's nowhere here where we see a different vision for what we could be spending on transportation and what we'd be spending on different modes. We spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars every year on transportation, overwhelmingly on personally owned vehicles. So I think there's some piece of context here where we need to do a little bit of that homework to understand where the real savings in the community could come from in this, because transit is incredibly efficient when it's designed well and used heavily. And so that's really what we should be targeting here. Thanks.
Okay, Councilor Ye. Jennifer.
Thank you. Well, I would love to sit here and argue with Mike about Coburg Road, and I'm sure we would have a lovely discussion, maybe discuss rather than argue. That's not really, I don't feel like, what we're here to do today. And we're here to figure out what we're going to ask the community to tell us about, and then we're going to sit around and discuss once we get that. So I think discussing whether we're going to build on MX or not is just kind of a waste of our time at this point. I do appreciate the discussion on Highway 99, and I do concur that I think asking folks more than just the complete package at the bottom for MX on 99 seems reasonable. And so I think adding it to the other packages so that so these are the 4 that you're proposing to send, so adding it to the original C and the modified C seems like a good idea at this point to see how folks feel about the Highway 99 situation. I just wanted to, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, just to remind people that we're not committing dollars in this process. We're setting up a vision of what we want our transportation system to look like, and then we're going to work on this vision moving forward as we find funds, as grants become available, as our community grows and we see our needs. So it's not set in stone. We're just kind of setting up a vision of what we want to do forward. So I very much like the work you guys have done. And besides the Highway 99, I think that these 4 options will give people something to talk about when they come to see us at a public hearing. I did have one question about your outreach. Considering that you have hundreds of trapped people on buses and at bus stops, I'm wondering, is there a reason you don't try to contact people in that way to get feedback? I mean, maybe you have rules that you can't do that, or...
So we did sit out actually at Eugene Station. I think I sat out there for about 8 hours one week, just trying to grab everybody. I mean, you see people in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they're like, no, I already took it. Then we're back out the next day. So we did talk to a lot of transit riders.
Okay.
We didn't want to kind of distribute the survey on there just because we wanted people to access the online open house. What we did is we passed out a lot of information. We had cards advertising the online open house. That way people don't miss their bus trying to talk to us and
Right.
Because if you actually ride the bus, it's a pretty big effort to reach more than just a small.
Right. I do actually ride the bus, which is why when I was riding the bus one day, I thought, look at all these captured people. If I had 2 questions that I could ask them, I might get a few of them to answer them. So I just thought maybe we should take more advantage of that. And, we would know those people, at least that day, rode the bus. So we know that they're transit riders to some degree. But thank you guys for your work.
Kate Reed.
Okay, so my first question is, just looking at the participant-built packages in the outreach summary, it does look like there are a large number of Highway 99 MX decisions in the packages. Was there a reason why you chose Coburg over 99 to add into the modified package?
Direction from the Oversight Committee.
Okay, so that was directly from them. Do you know why? Did they give a reason? Anyone who was there?
2 of the folks involved are here at the table.
Do you want, go ahead. I can start.
Anybody?
I'll go ahead and start.
I don't directly recall. I had another vision that I was proposing. So it was more River Road than adding Coburg in. I kind of felt that Coburg was more problematic for historical and political reasons.
Mm-hmm.
From what I recall at the Oversight Committee, I was one of the proponents of adding Coburg Road to have some more significant changes, but I think there was agreement on the committee to move forward with that. Most people, I recall, agreed Package C was a good representation of a possible plan to move forward. And then with a little tweak for that resulted in modified Package C, you start to see some differences. I think this isn't going exactly to what you're saying, but I kind of sense there might be some consensus in the room that maybe we should create an additional package to put out for a public hearing where we include Highway 99, either let's call it Package D or something like that. I sense there probably would be support for that.
Yeah, and it sounds like probably instead of adding it to a package that already exists, to give an option of Coburg versus 99 seems like a good direction. The other thing that I want to say is I appreciate how the public engagement outcome aligns with the outcome that we got from Transit Tomorrow. Because what we found with that is our community is interested in seeing frequency. They're interested in having spontaneity when they participate in our transit system. They're interested in getting out of their cars and being able to go wherever they can, the most places in the community, and rapid transit is how you do that, versus my favorite analogy of the gate at the end of your driveway opening every half hour or hour, and having to plan your life around that. So what I can see is consistency in our public engagement. It might be that it's the same people engaging, which often happens, but it also tells me that we're on the right track, and that as much as no build is less money, I think that the community and environmental costs of no build outweigh the amount of money that we may end up spending to build something, even if it's a small enhancement on the corridors. So I just wanted to point that out because often we're asked, how do Moving Ahead and Transit Tomorrow connect to each other? Transit Tomorrow will not be successful if Moving Ahead is no build. And Transit Tomorrow will not be successful if we don't look at which corridors need MX. So I just appreciate the process that we're going through and the alignment within the community, and I'm out of time.
Chris.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of boil it back, which to me is the important consideration, and that is this whole conversation is really about change and how we deal with change and how the community deals with change, which is what I think part of the outreach process was trying to get a handle on. And I'll channel my youngest son who said, you know, Dad, I'm not afraid of change, I'm afraid of loss. And too often, when we change something, it results in a loss. And this conversation right now has elements in it that could cause people to say, well, you do all this stuff and I'm going to wind up losing. And they could potentially lose money, they could lose control, which is self-determination on transportation. They could lose time, they could lose convenience, they could lose familiarity, you know, the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And then simplicity. Streets are for cars, period. How simple is that? And so what we need to be able to do is to re-articulate that the things we're talking about doing here actually result in a gain rather than a loss. And I don't think we have been effective at articulating, looking at all of these corridors, why that choice resulted in a net gain for that corridor. I know it's there. I have confidence that it's there, but we're not really able to express it in a clear and concise way that people can get. It's going to cost money, so you're going to lose money, but you could gain in all these other areas. There could be a tremendous gain in all these areas. I mean, we're talking about Coburg Road. To me, that's a huge familiarity issue. It's a problem right now, but people can't imagine how changing it would make it any better. And it could potentially be enormously better, but we have to be able to articulate that. So for me, the corridor choices really have to be centered on, is this really going to result in a beneficial change, and can we articulate that? In which case, I'm all in. I'm 100% supportive.
Thanks. Caitlin Vargas.
I just had a quick question. When you guys are soliciting public feedback, is there any information that folks are given about projection of growth? So everyone's understanding that we're planning for the future. So is there anything you're including that's saying, oh, we're projecting that Highway 99 is going to see the biggest growth boom, so they're understanding what they're evaluating?
The transportation modeling includes the expected increase in population and employment for the community, but explicit numbers, I think that's in the alternative
number of people served by each corridor and jobs is forecasted into the future year, so that was included, as well as traffic, right? So future traffic numbers.
Alan?
Yeah, thanks. This is an amazing amount of work to get us to this point. If I recall correctly, we started back in 2015 on this work. I think of note is that transportation projects are all extremely expensive. There's no such thing as a cheap transportation project anywhere. They're all tens of $millions or more. The intersection of I-5 and Beltline, $270 million plus. That's about the same as all of this combined. Put that in perspective. And something that Josh said, we almost always ask half a question. We always say, how much does this cost? And it's, how much does this cost compared to the alternatives? What does the alternatives cost? And what does this gain us? And what's the benefit? And like when we talk about climate change, we often say, how much is this going to cost? But we don't say, how much is it going to cost to do nothing, which is probably 10 times more expensive than dealing with climate change. When we did scenario planning at the MPO a couple of years ago, one of the things that we found out was that when we do that scenario planning and came up with a system that was a good system that relied on transit and bike and ped, is that we had less congestion, we had less pollution, and therefore better health in our community, to the tune of like $22 million a year in lower healthcare costs, lowered our greenhouse gases, lowered our transportation costs for everybody, and made it cheaper for everybody in the system. So transit investments to me make a lot of sense because of all those reasons. There's not just one little pigeonhole. It's the community perspective that for all those reasons we should be doing this kind of stuff. And most larger growing communities that rank high in livability have really good, excellent transit systems. There's a reason for that. And I'll need another round.
Is there anyone else from LTD who would like to speak? If not, I'm going to talk more. I'm going to talk some more. Oh, you could. Oh, thank you. Oh, okay, great. I wanted to just speak a little more about what I meant about MX on Coburg. I think if we were to provide the direction for MX on Coburg, it's not that we're saying that it will definitely become an MX corridor. I want to advocate, it's a critical north-south corridor, and to me, as a person who lives in that area, it needs something really significant to make it work so that cars can actually flow through it easily. And I see this potential project rather as making that possible, because again, if you go try to drive through Coburg right now, it is very, very difficult. And if we don't do anything about it, it's definitely not going to get better. I don't see it actually that different from River Road. River Road is also a north-south corridor, and I think they share many attributes. And I would say like, hey, if you have a situation where you're saying an MX possibility on River Road, I think logic would show that on Coburg Road it also makes sense as well. And the last thing is, I'm not advocating for MX on any of these corridors for beautification or anything like that. It's really about making a usable transportation system. Oh, one last thing. I also don't, if we do propose a additional package, I would be wary and cautious about trying to set up a situation where we make it look like it's Coburg versus Highway 99. I think that's kind of setting up a false kind of argument or situation. So I just want to put that out there.
Betty, go for it.
Thank you. If there was going to be MX anywhere, I think it should be on Highway 99. And when you talk about the benefits, I'd like to know what were the benefits of the two that we have. I know for that Pioneer Parkway lost a lot of trees, and the best thing we could do for climate control is plant more trees. And so how does that balance out with more people riding the bus if they do? And I think what we need is more frequent buses. Where I live in South Eugene, we don't have much choice about buses, but with smaller buses and more frequent would make more sense, I think, than some big thing. But I would either choose no build or the MX on Highway 99, perhaps. Thank you.
Anyone else from LTD who'd like to speak? Okay, we're gonna go back to, Kate Reed, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to touch a little bit more on the climate change piece and tie it back into what we're working on doing with Transit Tomorrow. In order to have more frequent service, we need roads and corridors that promote more frequent service. So imagine trying to put more frequent service on Coburg Road right now. Imagine trying to put a bus that comes every 10 minutes or 15 minutes on Coburg Road right now. And then imagine how many people you might be able to get out of their cars, which is a huge way to reduce our GHG locally, if we had corridors that were able to have 15-minute bus service along them so that people could, like I said before, be spontaneous in their movement around our city. We are looking at ways to get people from their doors or down their block into the rapid transit system that we are hoping occurs as a result of Transit Tomorrow and working on the Moving Ahead project. And there very well could be ways to get people out of their cars completely, but we're not quite there yet. So I do just want to say that while we're looking specifically at these 5 corridors, LTD as a whole has not dismissed any other part of the city or of our district that we're serving, and we are hoping to be able to access those areas which potentially lose coverage as a result of Transit Tomorrow and currently may not have enough coverage to get people onto the buses regularly. Just wanted to throw that out there while we're talking about this. And trees are great. I think trees are amazing. We planted a lot of trees on the MX project on West 11th. The beautification was pretty great for economic development opportunities, but it also provides an opportunity to get people out of their cars, which is the way that we can reduce our GHG locally and address climate change.
I have 4 counselors wanting a second round, and I'll get to them, but I'm going to jump in first for a minute. And just, a couple of comments. I think the beauty of this project is that all corridors are not created equal. And each of these corridors is, the proposal would address a different set of challenges. So where Coburg Road congestion might be the issue, for, I think, River Road and for Highway 99, there's big safety components there and huge equity components there about how people are served. So I think the beauty of the packages is that it enables us as a community to sort of look at those larger issues that we're trying to address in one sense, the congestion is profound. In another sense, we have probably an underserved part of the community that offers a possibility for us to really sort of change the default setting and change the paradigm there. So, I think this should not be a conflict between, I know we ultimately will make choices, but I also see that this is a very long-term process. Some of our choices will change over time, both as Transit Tomorrow comes into play, as we learn more, as we develop some of our land use choices, shift that paradigm. So it's, even though it appears to be, well, we're going to do this package or that package, I'm understanding that 10 years from now or 15 years from now, there's going to be some flex in how these decisions get applied. So I resonate with the idea of adding a package that it would include Highway 99, not to create a conflict there, but to put it out there because it is a corridor that reflects a different set of issues and concerns that we have as a community, and I think it should be in the package as a broad set. All right.
If there's no one else from LTD, I thought it would be a good idea to cede the rest of the time to city council members who want to go a second round. Just making sure? Okay, go ahead.
And I promise to make
Time back?
Yeah.
Next meeting, Josh.
I'll make space for anybody.
Your credit's pretty good, so.
Okay, so second round for Claire to begin.
Thank you. In response to the comment about trees, I think there was a net gain in trees when we built the West Eugene MX, which was an important value there. And that's the lovely thing about trees is we can plant them. And so Greg doesn't have to read my mind. Yes, I absolutely support putting out an additional package with the MX corridor proposed for Highway 99. I think one of the things we're seeing with the West 11th MX is, 10 years ago, most of us wouldn't have envisioned the new housing that's being built, has been built along there, and I certainly think there was a decision to make that investment because this new transit corridor was available. And I think, we could very well see the same kind of investment along Highway 99 if we chose to make that MX investment. So I haven't typed up any kind of formal motion because, again, I just have my chicken scratch pen here, but I would like to make a motion to put forward an additional package. Please, let's not call it modified package C2 or something like that. Someone can come up with a name for it, but an additional package that would identify MX for Highway 99, MX for River Road, enhanced corridor for 30th, MX for Coburg, and enhanced corridor for MLK.
Second.
Second. Thank you. And I appreciated Carl's comments about not having be a versus. I don't think it needs to be a versus. I don't know why that would be an issue. I recognize the challenge on Coburg and the challenge, whether it's actual or perceived, I could not say. But I think that would be an additional package that we should put before the public. And I have a second.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mike, you're next in the queue, so take it away.
Thank you. It's interesting to me. I think the mayor and Josh hit on the part that I would focus on, which is that each of these corridors have different community goals that I think we can accomplish with the nature of what gets built there that I think are important. I agree entirely that some of the greatest untapped potential for many community goals is on Highway 99, and that's a great place for us to do this. And Clara, you'd have had my yes vote if you'd have left the MX off Coburg. Other than that, I'd have been entirely in favor of that. Implicit in another of Josh's comments and in Carl's is a notion that we're not testing with either public opinion or demand or decrease individual car traffic. I don't believe that for a minute. And we haven't, if we're not measuring that before we make this decision, it's silly. We should be asking the people who live in that area, under what condition would you give up your individual automobile and take public transportation? Because I don't ever see that getting out of single digits. So what will happen is not that the public transportation decreases demand and thus decreases traffic. I don't think it'll decrease it at all. I think it'll just make it that much more difficult to travel on Coburg. But what I think and what anybody else thinks is fine. But I really think we ought to measure it by seeing what the people who live there are most likely to do before we make a decision. Because a lot of this decision is implicit on that assumption. So I really hope we're going to measure that and know what people are likely to do, and even with an open end of under what conditions would you choose public transportation instead. Thank you.
Remember I said I would cede the rest of the time to City Council. I kind of lied about that. I threw myself in because I did want to address something that Councilor Clark said. You know, I think there is a lot of value in asking the people who live along the corridor what they might choose to do or what they might prefer. But we have to remember this is a system-wide situation, and there might be people living in Springfield, living in Veneta, who need to travel through Coburg, whether as a transit rider, as a cyclist, or even as just a regular car driver going through that area. So I don't think it's wise to look at this situation as like, oh, we only need to ask the people who live along those corridors and areas as to whether that's the best idea, because it affects everybody. And one of the things I think the great thing about Coburg Road is that it is very successful. I think it's so successful that everyone's using it right now. And so that's why I think it needs it presents a very interesting and difficult challenge that that I'm hoping this will address. But I know City Council gets to vote on their own thing too. But speaking for myself and LTD, I would definitely be for your additional package. So thank you.
Alan.
It reminds me of one of my favorite Yogi Berra quotes, which is "Nobody ever goes there; it's too crowded." I think it's important to remember why we're doing this, why we're doing 5 of these. All at the same time, which is because they take 10 years apiece. And if we did them all separately, it would take forever. So I think establishing the vision is really important about the bookends of what we can do within each of these corridors. And so I'm eager to move forward with the MX and the enhanced corridor possibilities and not the no build, because I think it's important for the future of our community. And a prioritization for me is MX on Highway 99 and River Road, but I'm willing to look at all the other things. But I would caution us that there's a looming commute problem, which isn't really looming, it's already here, which is the east-west commuting. The only way we can get east-west across our community is on Beltline or West 11th, and they are packed. And the MLK corridor provides one of the few options as an alternative to those. So we have to keep that in mind as well. I think the task tonight is, of course, that we want to move all of these to a public hearing, and I'm in favor of that, including Claire's additional package. So, and it's also important that we're not locked, whatever the packages are, we're not locked into them. They provide the bookends, and they allow us to make individual decisions as we move forward, as funding comes available and as we get more input.
Chris?
Thank you. It is unique to transportation that you always have to think 10 to 20 years in the future. We don't build roads because we need them right now. Because if you looked at the roads that we're proposing, there's challenges, but you could argue that we don't need to build anything because it's fine right now. But in 10 years, in 20 years, which is the timeline to get this stuff built, you don't wait to fix your roof until it starts raining. So for me, thinking 20 years from now, or even 10 years from now, I'm going, Eugene right now has a decision point. Is it going to be a village or is it going to be a city? And I think in 20 years, if we still have village infrastructure, which is what we have right now, we're going to be in even worse trouble. So I'm fully supportive of the proposal to add MX to as many corridors as possible, because in 20 years, when we are a city, we're going to need city-like transportation options. And village infrastructure is not going to do. And so we may say, well, if we keep the village infrastructure, then we'll still remain a village. we've already shown that doesn't happen. Just go on Delta Highway at 5 o'clock, and you can see that if you don't build it, they will come. So we need to start thinking like the city we're going to be in 20 years and start planning and building the infrastructure that will support the city we're going to be in 20 years.
Anybody else? Okay, so, Greg.
Well, to tag on to Alan's comment, and I have a question for staff on this. One thing that I will say is all roads do not lead to downtown Eugene. And the issue of crosstown infrastructure has been huge for years, ever since I came here back in the 80s. It's like you can't get from one side of town to the other without having to go downtown on mass transit. So what has the discussion been around the overall full 61-mile build-out of the MX system, particularly as it relates to the routing that has been designated to go from one end of Beltline to the other end of Beltline? Because that is an important cog in the wheel, particularly since Riverbend has been built out in Springfield and that other things are being built north of Beltline. I think that, and I know that this is not the issue at hand today, but I would like a little bit of feedback on what that conversation has been, because eventually we're going to have to get to that infrastructure issue.
Back in 2015, when we performed a fatal flaw analysis, a Beltline MX route or high-capacity transit route was eliminated from current consideration. The investments on the Randy Pepe Beltline through the facility plan and the analysis that ODOT is performing now that could add a local arterial bridge north of the existing bridge to connect Green Acres to Division Avenue and Beaver Hunziker create an opportunity for east-west connectivity across our community that could include transit service as well. And that's maybe the extent of my transit planning expertise. But I think through Transit Tomorrow and other system planning that LTD can respond to those crosstown demands on the local street system, not necessarily on the regional freeway system.
Actually, if it's okay for Emily to go next, Emily Secord.
Yeah, thank you. I think my question's gonna be a little bit land use and kind of future planning related. And I'm curious, there's an opportunity that we could just sort of focus on enhanced corridor across the board. And Andrew, you had a really interesting comment at a previous conversation that we had about even if the community doesn't want MX today for all of the corridors that we're talking about today, it doesn't mean that we can't start moving towards that direction through the enhanced corridor methodology. And I'm just wondering if you could kind of speak to that, like the opportunity cost of maybe starting with enhanced corridor in some areas, knowing that there's an opportunity to expand on that, as necessary and as support, becomes a bigger consideration.
So if you recall, one of the great things about this project is we're working from the same toolbox. MX is just more of those tools for the most part. There's nothing about the enhanced corridor that would preclude us from upgrading, if you will. There would be some opportunity cost. MX stations are farther apart typically. We're talking about a little bit longer station spacing because it helps the bus move a little faster. There's the cost of waiting in the sense that land value on some of these corridors is going to continue to go up. Businesses will continue to be built closer to the road probably. So acquisitions, displacements become more difficult. I think that those are really the big opportunity costs in the short run. In the long run, maybe we don't see the redevelopment that we see with higher levels of investment. Not sure. We haven't done that analysis.
One thing, since I'm at the staff table, I think it's really important for us to be aware that a too incremental approach also makes it difficult to do matching funds for big federally funded projects. So we got huge matching funding for MX West. and for Gateway, and we, would hope it'll be a more competitive environment. I know we've talked about this, I think, before, where we would never get 70 or 80% from the federal government, we think now, but we might be blowing a chance at 40 or 50% if we do lots of little projects along the way and then say, hey, can we go back 9 years and count all that as match? Well, we won't be able to do that. So I think there's also, this is why I think having a conversation, as I said in my opening comments, having a conversation about a financing strategy sooner rather than later is really key, because we could otherwise accidentally close off some big investment opportunities.
Okay, we have a motion on the table for the city council. So the motion is to add a fifth package that would include MX for Highway 99 as well as River Road and Coburg Road. So any other comments about that? We ready, council, ready to vote to include that in the package? And then can we just amend the package and vote all at once? Or do we have to, is there a process here that I should know about? Does it matter how I do this?
I think we'd want to amend the package.
Amend the package first and then approve. Okay, so we're going to vote to amend the package to include this fifth. So all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1. Okay, that's excellent. So then we need to approve the whole package. So all in favor of sending the whole package towards a public hearing.
All 5.
Do we need
I need a motion. Sorry, I'm so ready to vote. I'm done. Let's vote.
moved.
Okay, so moved. Thank you. We have a motion. Second. Thank you very much. All right. All 5 packages. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? No, 6. Opposed, 2. 6 in favor, 2 opposed. Okay. All right, that's our
Great.
business.
Thank you very much, Eugene City Council. So on the LTD side, if I could get someone to make a motion to proceed.
Do you want to do the same thing that?
Yes.
We have to.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Great. Make a motion to add a 5th package that includes Highway 99, River Road, and Coburg Road MX with 30th Avenue to LCC and MLK Junior Boulevard as enhanced corridor.
Great. So Kate Reed has made a motion. It's been seconded by Caitlin Vargas. Any quick discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait. You can raise your hand.
Raise them high.
Okay, yeah, raise them high so I can.
Raise them
Yeah,
high.
there we go. So I got 5. So 6, sorry, 6. Yeah, 6. Yeah, so no opposition, that passes unanimously. Then I'll entertain a motion for affirming the package as amended.
So moved.
So moved by Josh Scove. Seconded by Kate Reed. All those in favor, please raise your hand high. So that is also 6 again. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that resolves our business for the evening. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation, great discussion. Thank you all, and we are adjourned.
And LTD Board also thanks Eugene City Councilor and the Mayor for hosting us, and thank you very much for your leadership on this subject.
That we voted on
Meeting adjourned.
had-